Well, I'm just. Do you think we need a beginning?
Well, yeah, I mean, you sort of like opened a little bit of a door to saying, you know, does the universe need a creator to make
Well,
this
something.
happen, right? So we might as well, it's early in the morning, we might as well push some hot buttons just to get people awake, right? So we have a whole bunch of different scenarios for the very, very long scale evolution of the universe, some of which are eternal. Time goes from minus infinity to plus infinity. Some of which are finite. The universe has not only a beginning but an end. And some of which are halfway, right? The universe has a beginning but not an end. And in fact, that last one, even though it's the weirdest, is kind of the working model for most respectable cosmologists today. And so you can ask in the context of any of these, what else is there to be explained other than what the universe is doing, right? There's a sense in which there's a philosophy which I don't necessarily agree with, but you can say science says what the universe does. It doesn't say why the universe does those things. So in particular, you might think that there's a very big difference in the explanatory burden if the universe has a beginning versus when it doesn't. If you were Isaac Newton, if you believed in classical mechanics, the universe just lasts forever, right? Time is absolute, and it just goes on forever. Newton actually was a little bit worried about the implications of that. Newton thought that God would come in and rearrange the planets occasionally, because otherwise they would run off. And later, Pierre-Simon Laplace made fun of him for that loss of courage and just believing the universe could run all by itself. But then once general relativity comes along with Einstein, you can show that if the universe is full of stuff, it's either expanding or contracting. So there was probably a crunch or a bang, right? There was a beginning or an end. And one of the first people to take this seriously was a priest, Georges Lemaitre, and he developed this theory of the primeval atom, which we would now call the Big Bang. And he said, you know, several billion years ago, everything was on top of everything else. Maybe the universe, contra Newton, had a start. Right? And you know who loved this idea was the Pope. The Pope said, all right, good, I'm going to put you on a commission and you can write a paper that science has proven that God created the universe now, right? And Lemaitre said, no, I do not want to do that. I don't want to, because Lemaitre was a smart cookie, and he knew, this is the 1920s, he knew, like, you know, we don't have the final answer now. We can't write a document that says, proof that God created the universe because it had a beginning, because some smart cosmologist is going to come along and say it doesn't have a beginning, right? Someday in the future. So, but nevertheless, there's this thought that if the universe is eternal, it could be self-sustaining. It could just be self-contained and all by itself, whereas if it had a beginning, there needs to be a cause for its creation. And I would say that even then, that's not right. This is one of the wonderful consequences of this way of thinking about the intersection of quantum mechanics and gravity that Stephen Hawking and others have pursued, is that even a universe with a beginning can be fully self-contained. That the description of the universe, just because it has a first moment in time, does not require anything outside to push the button and get it started. You shouldn't think of, even if the Big Bang is the beginning, let me just say parenthetically, all these different scenarios we're talking about are unlikely to be true. Okay, because we don't know the right answer. Not Roger's scenario, my scenario, Laura's scenario, none of these have a better than 10% chance each of being the correct final answer. I am speaking for all of us. We should be humble about this, right? So if it does turn out to be true that the universe had a beginning, you shouldn't think of it as there was nothingness and then the universe popped into existence. It's very hard to not think of that way because the flow of time is embedded in how we think about the world. And you think about, well, if there was the Big Bang, then it came from nothingness. But there wasn't a nothingness that turned into the Big Bang. That's the wrong way of thinking. Think about it from the other side. There was a first moment of time in the history of the universe. And just because there was that doesn't mean there was some reason why it happened.